After the end of World War II, the world was divided between two superpowers, the Union of Zernitra in the east, and the United Kingdom in the west, and not long after, another kind of war broke out between them, which was the war for control over space, and who would reach it first. And after that, the Union of Zernitra started sending the first artificial satellite into space, and also spacecrafts to the moon, and they managed to surpass the United Kingdom in the conflict between them. And they had an even bigger ambition, which was sending the first human to the surface of the moon. And in the year 1960, the Union managed to successfully send the first animal into space, and there was not much left before sending humans to the moon. But the problem they were facing was that the difference between dogs and humans was huge, so none of them knew the real dangers, especially since dogs cannot speak and say what they are feeling. And because of that, they came up with a genius idea, which was that they would send creatures that closely resemble humans into space. And from here the secret project Like&Sub began. And this project was about secretly sending a vampire into space, in order to determine the dangers that would happen. And in the same year, during the month of October, a group of astronauts arrive at their training location, but suddenly the director of the training center comes over, and calls for an astronaut among them named Lev, because one of the leaders wants to speak with him about a secret matter. So Lev gets startled because he thought he did something wrong, and goes with him while feeling scared and nervous. And after a while, Lev arrives and stands in front of President Slava. So he tells him that the Union of Zernitra wants to send the first human into space, but unfortunately in the case that something goes wrong or the person dies during the broadcast, our image will look terrible in front of the whole world. So because of that we decided that we will secretly send vampires into space instead of humans, before the official launch date, and avoid any possible problem that could happen then, and now you will become responsible for training the vampire that we selected. And keep in mind that if we fail in this project, we will lose our lives. And after that, the president's assistant takes Lev, and they head to an underground prison cell, because the vampire is imprisoned there. But Lev is frightened and terrified of her, because of what he heard about them in movies. And the moment they arrive, they remove the chains and restraints from the coffin. And the president's assistant calls for her to come out. Suddenly the coffin opens, and Irina the vampire comes out of it. So the assistant turns to Lev, and informs him about the tasks that he is supposed to do. First, the training will only last for 2 months, and Lev is responsible for monitoring and training her, and any action that comes from her will be his responsibility. Second, he must preserve Irina's secrecy from the civilians, and most importantly he must treat her as nothing more than a tool for the experiment. And after that, the assistant gets ready to leave Lev and Irina alone and go away. But Lev stops him because he does not know how to deal with a vampire. So the assistant calls for a girl named Anya, and she is responsible for all the information that Lev will need. So Anya speaks and tells him some important instructions that Lev is supposed to follow, which are that the training must be from sunset until dawn, because vampires are weak against sunlight. And she gives him a paper containing the daily schedule. And the first thing they will do is that he will take her on a tour around the city, and then they will go to the complex so she can eat. So Lev looks at Irina with a gaze full of fear, because he thinks that vampires only feed on human blood. But Anya corrects his information, and tells him that she eats the same meals that humans eat normally. And that makes him feel a little relieved, and he goes to Irina and gives her clothes, so they can go on their tour around the city. And after a while, Irina rides the bicycle with Lev, and they head through the streets, and they arrive at the complex where the rest of the astronauts are. So he can introduce her to them, and he asks her to remove the cap on her head, so she can reveal her true identity to them from the start. So the astronauts become shocked the moment they see her, but very quickly one of them starts mocking her, so Irina immediately gets angry and insults him back. But Lev quickly interferes and stops them before a problem happens between them. And after they finish, they ride the motorcycle and continue their tour, and while they are moving, they see a grave for the first dog that went into space. So Lev tells her the story behind it. 3 years earlier, the first living creature was sent into space, but unfortunately the spacecraft was not properly prepared, and after the launch by some time, the temperature of the ship started rising, and the dog died within only a few hours. So Irina becomes shocked because she heard in the news that the dog stayed alive for a whole week. But apparently that was just a lie, so the country's reputation would not be affected. So Lev is forced to stay silent and not answer her. So Irina gets down from the motorcycle and stands in front of the grave, and she is extremely sad, because she feels that she will face the exact same fate as the dog. But in return she will achieve one of her dreams, which is traveling into space. And after they return to the prison cell again, Lev feels extremely cold, so he decides that he will take a blanket and give it to Irina. And when he goes to her he apologizes for the words his friend said to her, and for her being just a meaningless experiment. And on the second day, Lev goes to Irina so they can begin training for the first time. And after that he takes her and they head to the training center and they practice physical fitness. And the requirement is that they run 5,000 meters around the field, so her endurance can improve, so Lev advises Irina to run at her own pace, because she might get tired halfway through, and waste the entire day. But after Anya gives them the signal to start, Irina runs at her maximum speed, and when Lev calls out to her so she can slow down, because in this way it is impossible to finish the whole day, Irina completely ignores him, and Lev feels embarrassed because she became faster than him, and he starts running quickly as well and overtakes her. And when Lev looks behind him and remembers that Irina is a vampire, he becomes extremely terrified and feels that she is running so she can suck his blood. But he tries to stay calm and remove those illusions from his mind so he can deal with her properly. And after a while, Lev manages to defeat Irina and get ahead of her. But unfortunately both of them end up using all their energy, and they become extremely exhausted and neither of them can move. So Anya becomes surprised by what they did, because this was only supposed to be a warm-up. And after that, they go so she can get a full physical examination, so they can measure her weight and vital signs and other things. And when they finish the examination, they go to the complex so they can eat. But this time they do not eat normal food, they eat food made specifically for space so they can get used to its taste. So when Lev tastes the food he finds it horrible and impossible to eat, but when he looks at Irina he becomes surprised that she is eating it and actually likes it. But vampires do not have a sense of taste at all, they only feel the texture and temperature. So Lev becomes surprised again, because vampires normally eat their own food, and do not drink blood. But the truth is that drinking blood for them is forbidden because it is a savage act, and the only time Irina drank blood was during traditional village rituals, and at that moment Irina felt warmth in her body and her strength increasing. But after that day she never drank blood again. And after they finish eating, they head to the next training session, which is the thermal chamber, because in space the temperature inside the spacecraft is controlled at 20 degrees Celsius. But sometimes problems happen and unfortunately the temperature rises, and because of that Irina will enter this chamber, and the requirement is that she endures for 1 hour inside water vapor with a temperature of 90 degrees Celsius. And the difficult thing about this challenge is that vampires' bodies cannot tolerate heat. And after a while, the scientist Franz responsible for operating the chamber enters, along with his supervisor, but apparently that supervisor does not like vampires, and that becomes obvious from the horrible way he treats her, because he keeps mocking her from the moment he saw her, and always calls her by the name Filthy Experiment. And not only that, he even brings out some restraints so he can handcuff her, because he is afraid of her. And after a while the training begins, but not much time later Irina starts feeling extreme exhaustion. But she endures with all her strength because of her dream of traveling to space, and after the hour ends, Irina quickly runs out of the chamber, and falls to the ground from exhaustion, and takes a cup of water from Lev and pours it over her body, so she can cool herself down a little. Then they head to the second training, which is the centrifuge machine, because during rocket launches against the direction of gravity, the passengers inside the ship feel as if they are being crushed by several times their own weight. And the goal of the training is enduring the force of gravity. So Irina goes and sits inside the machine, but the supervisor calls Franz so he can tighten the restraints on her hard, and that causes her severe pain, and also when he turns on the machine, he orders him to raise the speed to the maximum, to the point that she started bleeding from her stomach. And after that, they head to swimming training, and while Irina was in the water, Lev becomes surprised that after all those brutal trainings Irina is still holding herself together, and is also giving all her effort, and she did not even try to escape a single time. And after that, they go to landing training, and when they stand on a high place, and Lev asks her to jump, Irina looks at the ground, and becomes extremely scared, to the point that her legs start trembling, but Lev does not give her a chance and pushes her, but she cannot control herself, and fails the landing. So she tries to climb back up so she can try one more time. But because of her fear her legs cannot carry her, so Lev decides not to pressure her and stop for today. And after they return to the prison cell again, Irina goes so she can take a shower, but she starts seeing nightmares, where she falls from a high place and dies. And after 10 days of training for landing, Irina fails to pass that training because she is still afraid and cannot control her emotions, and until now she has not been able to improve even slightly, so Lev starts thinking about how to make her overcome her fear, but he does not know exactly what to do. And on the next morning, a secret cabinet meeting takes place so they can discuss the details of the Like-44 experiment, and President Slava's assistant tells them that Irina's health is good and improving, and the training is going very well. So the president of the Union of Zernitra asks them about Irina's fate after the mission. So one of the ministers stands up and suggests that they execute her, so they can keep the matter completely secret, and guarantee that she will not speak in the future. But the president does not make the decision right now, and decides to delay it a little until they think about it. And after they finish the meeting, and the president returns to his office again, he is upset and bothered by the suggestion of executing Irina, because every time they carry out a secret project, they are forced to kill the test subject. And that causes them to lose manpower that could benefit them later. So the president's assistant suggests to him that he sends her to prison so they can use her in other secret experiments. And on the other side, Lev is alone in the city, so some of his astronaut friends run into him and ask about Irina in a sarcastic way. So Lev gets a little angry and defends her, but they continue insulting him and her, especially since Lev was originally at the same rank as them, but because of his fight with an officer higher than him his rank was lowered. And at the same time, Irina is having a physical examination with Anya, so Anya notices that she lost some weight because of the brutal training she is doing, so she advises her to rest a little, so she does not overwork herself or something bad happens to her, because they might kill her if they find out that she is not capable of the mission. And at night, Lev is sitting at one of the cafes, holding a psychiatry book and reading it, because he wants to treat Irina's condition quickly. Because if they find out that she is not ready, they will kill her without hesitation. But he cannot figure anything out, so he leaves the place feeling worried. But the moment he steps outside, a genius idea comes to his mind. And immediately he goes to Irina and takes her to the military airport, so they can ride an airplane and fly through the sky, and she can overcome her fear. But the moment they start moving, Irina is terrified and nervous, and closes her eyes from how scared she is, but after she opens them and sees the moon in front of her, she becomes amazed by its beauty and remembers her dreams of traveling to space, and finally manages to overcome her fear of heights. And after a while, Lev lands before sunrise, and is happy because he finally succeeded in his mission. But the moment they step onto the ground, they find military trucks loaded with bottles of blood. So he calls one of the soldiers so he can know what happened. So the soldier tells him that an accident happened at the rocket base, and the engineers there got injured. And we find out that an intercontinental rocket was destroyed during a test launch, and that led to the deaths of 500 people. But the government covered up the matter, and said that it was only a plane crash accident. And after 2 days, Irina goes and trains on landing, after overcoming her fear of heights, and although she failed to land properly, she improved a lot compared to last time. And after that they take a break for a while before going to another training session. So Irina asks him about the reason for testing the launch of a rocket like that at a space base. So he replies to her that unfortunately those are war weapons. Their purpose is killing innocent people. I only wish that rockets were made for the purpose of sending people to space. And after a while, they head to parachute training, but this time from an airplane. And since it is her first time, Lev jumps into the sky while holding Irina so he can teach her how to use the parachute and how to land on the ground without getting injured. And at the end of the day, Irina enters the bathroom and takes a shower, but she still sees nightmares again about the army of the Union of Zernitra, while they come with all their forces and capture her from her village, among the sorrowful looks from her people. And 1 month before Irina's official launch into space, Lev stands in front of the director of the training center and President Slava's assistant, and informs them about the latest news regarding the details of Irina's life, but he is worried about the manufacturing defects in the spacecraft. So because of that he asks them about its condition now, but they do not answer him, and he notices from their expressions that it still is not ready the way it should be. And after that Lev goes to meet Irina, and explains to her the details of the trip to space, and how to exit the spacecraft and land safely on the surface of the Earth when she returns from space. And after 3 days Irina's space suit gets made, and she is happy and excited while wearing it, but she was facing a problem with it, which was that the suit is very heavy and extremely hot. And at night, Lev meets one of his astronaut friends, whose name is Rose, after she heard that Irina wore the suit before any other human, and at that moment she is extremely jealous of her, and tells him, do you not feel that a vampire is surpassing us? You are the reason behind what is happening. Anyway, the moment her mission ends, she will immediately be disposed of, and maybe you will be the one taking her to her grave. And suddenly Irina enters on them after hearing their conversation, and approaches Rose and starts insulting her in humans. But Lev tries to interfere and end the matter before the argument escalates, and apologizes to her for the words that Rose said about her. And on the next day, it is an official day off from training for Irina, so Lev goes to her and tells her about next week's trainings, and among them is the vacuum chamber. And this is a chamber where the oxygen levels are high, and the air pressure is low, and the duration of this training will be 10 full days. And after that Lev takes Irina so they can go out and have some fun, and they go to the cafe where Lev always sits. And while they are sitting, Irina asks him about his past, and when he started loving the idea of going to space. So he tells her, when I was little I saw an airplane flying in the sky in front of the moon, and at that moment I wished that I could really go there. And after they finish sitting together, the two of them go to a shop that sells skating shoes, because Arena wanted to skate on ice. And when they finish they go to a lake that froze because of the harsh cold, and immediately Arena starts playing and enjoying her time, and feels like she became free again, and that she escaped beyond the prison walls. And after she finishes, she goes and sits with Lev for a while, and asks him, why was your rank lowered? You always had high grades. So he replies to her, I was violent toward my superior officer, because he yelled at my astronaut friend, and all of that was because of their failure. And in the end they got fired from work, even though my friend apologized, but despite that no one accepted that apology. So Arena tells her story when she was little, when her parents became prisoners during the war, and they were burned to death, and they also killed many of the villagers. But before her parents died, they gave her a necklace called the Moon Stone, as a keepsake for her so she would continue feeling their presence. And since then Arena's dream of traveling to space began, and because of that she is giving all her effort in training. And also she does not care if they execute her after she finishes the experiment. And on the next day, Lev takes Arena and they head to the vacuum chamber. And after that, Lev takes a break until Arena comes out of the chamber, and heads to the complex so he can get his meal and sit with his friends. But his friend Rose asks him about Arena with complete sarcasm and insult. But Lev simply replies to her while smiling, so he does not create problems, and starts thinking about Arena's condition right now. And after a while, Lev goes with the astronauts, and they stand in front of the president's assistant, and she is holding a letter specially from the president, telling them in it that we will choose the best 6 among you in performance, and those 6 will compete over which one of them will go to space. So one of them asks her about the development of the spacecrafts, because they are worried that they will get destroyed like what happened before in the animal space launch experiments. But the president's assistant reassures him that the spacecrafts are currently being improved. And after that all the astronauts begin training with all their effort, because every one of them wants to write his name in history, as the first human to go into space. And after Lev finishes his training, he goes to the vacuum chamber so he can check on Arena's progress, and finds her becoming extremely exhausted and worn out. And she also starts seeing many nightmares about the day her parents were killed, after they suddenly saw the forces of the Union of Zernitra coming toward them with their terrifying strength. And they kept firing bullets everywhere, and killing people and burning them. And at that moment Arena was inside her house, and saw her parents burning right in front of her eyes. And on the next day, Lev goes to Arena and takes her out of the chamber, after she finally managed to endure 10 full days inside it, and succeeds in that training, and he praises her for her endurance, but apologizes to her because she will not be able to rest, and they must start other trainings because there is no time. And Lev takes her and they go train for parachute landing, and they board the airplane and both of them jump together, and this time Arena improves greatly, and immediately they go for another attempt. But this time Arena will jump alone without Lev's help, so he gives her some instructions so she can follow them. And after that Arena jumps into the sky, but at first she loses control over herself, so Lev quickly goes and tries to grab her hand. And after that he lets her go so she can open her parachute and land by herself, and Arena finally succeeds in landing safely, so Lev goes to her while happy, because she managed to pass that training after the first try. But he informs her that she still needs to train on spinning a little, so she can control herself quickly before she loses consciousness and crashes into the ground. So Arena tells him it does not matter. The purpose of this training is that I return safely again, but in the end after I finish the experiment they will get rid of me. Humans are the enemy who killed my family and burned my village. I can never forgive them for that. But honestly you are the only person that I do not see as bad. And while they are sitting and talking, they see something like a meteor flying in the sky, and suddenly it falls onto the ground. So the two of them quickly take each other and head there fast so they can see what happened. But they discover that it was a spacecraft that crashed, and it also contained dead dogs. So Arena sees that sight and becomes terrified, and starts recalling memories from her painful past, and imagines herself in the dog's place, while the spacecraft exploded with her inside. And she falls onto the ground and her breathing rate starts increasing. And suddenly the director of the training center comes there and asks them what happened. But he sees the spacecraft while it is destroyed. And after that they ride the military vehicles so they can return again. And when the director looks at Arena, he finds her in a state of shock, and tells Lev you must get Arena out of her trauma as quickly as possible, because if she is not ready at the specified time they will eliminate her. And not only her that they will kill, they will also eliminate us too. And on the other side, President Slava is standing in front of one of the officials. So the official tells him put many explosives inside the spacecraft that Arena will travel on, because she is nothing more than a lab rat, and in case she lands in another country, we must preserve our secrets. And at the same time, Irina returns to her prison cell again. But when she goes to sleep, she wakes up from a terrifying nightmare and sees herself on the moon while a spacecraft is chasing her. And suddenly it explodes into her and throws her far away. So Irina gets up from the ground, and all at once she sees the corpses of the dogs that died in the experiments. And when she looks at her body, she finds it starting to rot and collapse. So Irina screams loudly, to the point that she wakes Lev from his sleep. And on the next day, Lev goes so he can wake Irina up and they can begin their training sessions. But the moment he goes to her, he finds her awake but clearly suffering from exhaustion and severe fatigue. And that is because she could not sleep yesterday because of the nightmares. And then they go to physical fitness training, but apparently Irina cannot run at all. So Anya becomes extremely surprised, because she never reached that level even on the harshest day where she gave effort. And after that they go to thermal chamber training, and they notice that she started getting tired much faster than the previous times. And when they finish the trainings, they head to the complex so they can get their meal. And at that moment Lev informs Irina that they will stop training today, and they will not practice parachute landing. But she objects to him because she wants to become better as quickly as possible. But the moment she stands up, she loses her balance and falls to the ground, so Lev goes to her and yells at her, and forces her to go to a doctor, so they do not waste all the effort they made for nothing. And after that Irina goes to the hospital and gets hooked to IV fluids, and Lev and Anya learn from the doctor that she might be suffering from anemia. But the truth is that the doctor cannot determine her condition exactly, because she is a vampire and not human. And after they finish with him, they go to Irina, and Lev asks her about the real reason behind what happened to her, so she reached this condition. So Irina tells him, I saw a nightmare, where a rocket exploded into me, and I turned to ashes like the dog. And ever since then I have felt that my body is not right. And after several days, Irina remains in the same condition without improving at all. Even Natalia tried making nutritious food for her, yet she completely refused to eat it, and unfortunately the doctors were unable to treat her at all. And at this rate she will not be able to travel to space, and they will most likely get rid of her. And after that Lev walks with Anya and they talk about Irina's condition, and they try thinking together so they can find a solution quickly. And while they are talking, Lev remembers Irina's story when she sucked blood for the first time, and how that blood made her body active and full of energy. And immediately the two of them head to the hospital so they can convince her, but she completely refuses, because she does not like humans and is afraid of becoming contaminated by them. So Lev starts blaming himself, because he was the one who took her and they went to the place of the spacecraft wreckage, and he holds his head and thinks for a while and asks her, what do you think about drinking my blood instead? So Irina becomes shocked, but immediately agrees, and at the same time Anya goes and stands at the door, so she can make sure that nobody enters on them. And after that Lev uncovers his arm, so Irina approaches him and starts sucking his blood. And indeed after a while Irina feels a major improvement in her body, and after that prepares for the upcoming trainings. But she asks him, are you not afraid of riding a spacecraft and having it explode while you are inside it? So he replies to her, honestly I would be terrified, but this is a dream that I would sacrifice my life to achieve. And 7 days before the official launch, President Slava asks the president of the Union of Zernitra to delay the launch date a little, so they can repair all the manufacturing defects that might happen, because the success rate right now is only around 30%, but the president of the union completely refuses, and also shuts the door in his face. And at night Lev and Irina go train on parachute landing, and the real goal of this training is landing safely on planet Earth upon returning. But Lev looks at her face, and remembers the words of the director of the training center, who told him that they would place explosives inside the spacecraft, so if it lands in another country they can blow it up and preserve the nation's secrets. So Lev feels that all the effort Irina is making will go to waste, but he decides that he will give all his energy. And then the two of them go to the final training of the day, which is the centrifuge machine, and during the training the machine suddenly malfunctions, and that leads to its speed increasing insanely, and unfortunately at this rate Irina will die. So Lev quickly grabs the toolbox, and heads to the machine's structure, and tries with all his strength to disconnect the electricity from it. But the supervisor responsible for the training tries to yell at him and stop him. But of course Lev does not listen to his words, and manages to break the machine and stop it. And after a while, the supervisor goes to him and yells that he broke that machine, because of a filthy vampire. So Irina looks at him angrily. So the supervisor gets furious and goes toward her and kicks her with his foot, and keeps hitting her with repeated strikes, and also places his foot on her head so he can humiliate her. But Lev cannot stop his anger at that point, and approaches him and keeps yelling at him, and takes his chain from him and throws it hard onto the ground. and screams at him, so he apologizes to her immediately. But Irina interferes and stops him so he does not get harmed in his job. So the supervisor gets up from the ground and tells him, "You assaulted an officer higher than you, and also destroyed property and disobeyed orders. I will throw you in prison right now." And immediately the supervisor calls for the soldiers and orders them to take Lev and put him in solitary confinement. So Lev looks at Irina's face and apologizes to her. And 24 hours before the launch, Irina stands in front of President Slava, and he tells her there are some important instructions that you must follow. First is testing voice message reception in space, and the president gives her a paper with food recipes written on it, and if she is safe she will read the meatball recipe. But if something happens to her she will read the cheeseburger recipe. And those recipes are actually secret code words. Because if the United Kingdom intercepts the communication, they might discover what they are doing. And of course the president threatens her that if she says anything different from what is written, he will detonate the bomb located underneath the seat. And on the other side, Lev is sitting in prison sadly, because he will not witness the moment of Irina's launch into space. But suddenly Natalia, the restaurant waitress, enters on him, along with some guards, and the surprise is that Natalia turns out to be a secret chief in intelligence, and we learn from her that they conducted some investigations, and the centrifuge machine was not malfunctioning, but rather someone tampered with it, and ruined it, so he could hurt Irina, and that person turns out to be Franz. And the reason that made him do that was his opposition to President Slava, because if Irina died, his rank would be lowered. And at night, and only 2 hours before the official launch time, Irina gets prepared so she can go board the spacecraft, so Ania goes and gives her the necklace so she can take it with her. But one of the workers sees her, and prevents her from taking it onto the ship. But suddenly Lev comes from far away and stops him. And after that Lev takes Irina away so they can talk together, and tells her about what happened with him in prison, and about the story of Franz, so Irina becomes happy that Lev will be with her during the launch time, and gives him her necklace so he can keep it with him until she returns. And after a while, the director of the training center enters on them, and informs them that the time has finally come, and immediately takes them and they ride the car and head toward the rocket. And the moment they arrive, Irina goes up in the elevator, and stands in front of the spacecraft door, and looks at planet Earth one final look, as if she is saying goodbye to it. And on the other side, all the workers are in a state of alert and readiness, and they examine Irina's vital signs before launching the rocket, and after that they activate the engines and the rocket officially begins launching. But suddenly during the ascent, the connection between them and Irina gets cut off, and they start noticing that her heartbeat reached 150, and the breathing rate is rapidly increasing continuously, and unfortunately at this rate Irina will lose consciousness. So the workers enter into a state of tension and terror, and President Slava tries speaking to her, and calling out to her to say the recipes they agreed on, but unfortunately Irina does not respond to him at all, and they all believe that she most likely died from the pressure and heat of the ship. But at the same time, Lev holds her necklace, and trusts that she will remain alive. And suddenly the communication between them returns again. So the president calls out to her, and asks her what is today's recipe. So Irina speaks, and says today's recipe is meatballs, and that means the mission succeeded. So the workers become extremely happy, and especially Lev, because she finally achieved her dream. And at the same time, Irina is sitting while watching the beauty of space, and sees her village beneath her while she is flying, and while she is sitting and enjoying herself, she sees the moon in front of her, and wishes that she could go there one day. And after a while, the mission ends and Irina prepares herself to enter Earth's atmosphere, and the moment she passes through it, the spacecraft burns intensely, and unfortunately interference happens in the communication, and also the spacecraft's temperature starts increasing severely, and at this rate the protective shield could melt. So Lev quickly runs toward the microphone and tries calling out to her, but she does not respond. But luckily for her the spacecraft will crash within the Union's territory, and because of that they will not detonate the bomb, and immediately military forces head out so they can search for her, after they approximately discovered the location where she crashed. And the moment Lev gets down from the airplane, he takes his motorcycle and searches for her everywhere, and while he is moving, he finds traces on the ground, and the spacecraft in front of him, so he quickly heads toward it but does not find her inside, and that means she managed to land with the parachute and she is close to this place. So Lev calls out to her at the top of his voice, and rides his motorcycle and continues searching, but unfortunately because of the intensity of the snowstorm that is happening, Lev loses control over the motorcycle and falls off it onto a rock and his leg gets seriously injured. But he does not give up and stands again, and remembers all his memories with her, and promises her that he will find her, and goes to the motorcycle so he can continue searching. And after a long search through the area, Lev manages to find Irina lying on the ground, so he quickly goes to her and wipes the snow off her face. and informs the forces about the location where he is. And after a while they return to the camp again, so President Slava goes to Arena and welcomes her, and orders everyone present to applaud for her. But at the same time, there are three men standing far away and staring at her. And it is obvious from their expressions that they are planning something evil for her. And at night, they hold a celebration party, in honor of the project's success and Irina's safe return. And while they are celebrating, Lev stands in front of President Slava, and informs him that there will be an important meeting with him tomorrow, so they can discuss all the details of the mission. And after that Lev goes away alone, but he is sad and upset that Irina's great achievement will not be remembered in history, as if all the effort she made will go to waste, and on the contrary they might kill her, so they can guarantee that the project will remain secret. And on the next day Irina and Lev stand in front of President Slava in a meeting, and tell him about everything they did since the project started. So the president thanks them for their effort, and calls for the director of the training center so he can read the paper in his hand, which contains the decision to promote Lev into an official astronaut, and with that he can compete with his colleagues in going to space. And after that Lev and Irina leave from the president, and while they are walking, Lev thanks Irina because she is the reason behind this promotion, and promises her that he will give all his effort so he can become the first astronaut to reach space. But suddenly they encounter the other astronauts on their way, and as usual Rose starts insulting Irina like every time. But this time Irina manages to provoke them, because she is the only one who went to space while they did not, and in the end Rose leaves her and walks away. And then Lev escorts Irina to her prison cell for the final time, because after the promotion he will go live with the rest of the astronauts. But the moment they enter they find many devices everywhere. So they ask Anya what is all this? So she replies to them these are devices for measuring Irina's vital signs while she sleeps. And after that Lev goes upstairs so he can ride the car and leave, and asks Anya to take care of Irina, because he will no longer monitor her anymore, and then says goodbye to her and leaves. And on the next day, there is a ministers' meeting with the president of the union, with Irina present among them, and the president thanks her and honors her in front of them, and launches a new project that they will start working on, which is launching the first human into space, and also postpones the decision of getting rid of Irina for the current time. And with the beginning of the new year, celebrations begin everywhere in the country, and at the same time Anya is sitting with Irina inside her prison cell, and gives her a dress as a gift, so they can celebrate this year together. And after that they head to the city so they can walk around through the streets. And after that they go to the lake and throw a pine nut into it. And each one of them makes a wish, but Irina wishes that Lev will pass the tests and travel to space like her, and then they skate a little on the ice, and spend an enjoyable time together. And after a while the astronauts' tests begin in order to choose the best 6 among them, and Lev tries to give all his effort, and manages to excel in the centrifuge machine and physical fitness, and performs well in all the tests. And at night Lev is sitting on his bed inside the dormitory, and looks at the mark of Irina's bite on his hand, and remembers his conversation with her when she first returned to Earth, and wishes that he could see her again soon. And on the next day, Lev goes and visits Irina in her prison cell, and brings her flowers as a gift from him to her, because she is the first astronaut in the world, so Irina thanks him for that celebration, because ever since she was captured during the war, nobody considered her anything more than just a lab rat. And on the next day, the Union of Zernitra wakes up to shocking news, which is that the United Kingdom sent the first chimpanzee into space, and because of that matter the president of the Union becomes extremely furious, and contacts Slava so he can speed up sending humans into space. But Slava cannot speed it up because the spacecraft still needs a lot of development, so what happened with Irina does not happen again, but he promises him as soon as possible. And on the other side, the director of the training center stands in front of the astronauts, and tells them now we will announce the best 6 among you, but we will choose 3 main astronauts competing for first place, and another 3 as backups in case something happens. And the director starts calling out the names, and luckily Lev turns out to be among the 3 main astronauts. And immediately Lev runs to Anya and Irina so he can inform them that he was officially accepted. So Irina congratulates him but asks him to give his maximum effort, because she will not accept anything from him except getting first place and traveling to space. And after that, they begin modern trainings with the astronauts, and they are also exposed to the maximum intensity in the normal trainings. But Lev remains steady and does not give up despite the difficulty of the training, because he promised Irina that he would take first place. And at the same time, Anya goes to Irina so she can inform her about the latest news in the training center, and tells her that Lev became one of the strongest candidates to take first place because of how hard he works. But she steps outside the prison cell, because she is feeling afraid and nervous, because she does not know what will happen to her after this. So Anya goes to her and tries to calm her down. And on the other side inside the complex, all the astronauts are in a state of exhaustion and fatigue. But Lev is happy because he finally became very close to his dream. And after a while, they go to perform the parachute landing test, but after Lev jumps from the airplane, he notices that Rose entered a spinning state and is about to lose consciousness, and at this rate she will crash into the ground hard and die. So Lev quickly runs toward her and puts his life in danger so he can save her, and tries to grab her, and manages to open her parachute, and at the last moment he opens his own parachute as well. But he cannot control himself, and lands among the trees and gets injured. And after that Lev goes to the doctor so he can examine him, and the doctor advises him to rest for a while, because his body will be seriously harmed. And suddenly the director of the training center enters on them, and praises him because he put his life in danger in exchange for saving his colleague. And at night, Lev walks with Rose in the street so he can check on her after what happened. So Rose asks him, "Why did you save me?" So he replies to her, "Because when I see a friend in front of me about to die, I must save them immediately without thinking." So Rose thanks him and regrets that she was always insulting him and Irina. And after a while, the two of them sit in front of the lake, and Rose is sitting sadly, because after what happened she officially dropped out of the competition. And she wished that Lev had not saved her and that she died instead of losing, and says, "When I joined the Air Force, everyone bullied me because I am a girl, and because of that I hated losing against anyone. But honestly you are better than me at everything. I do not deserve to become the first female astronaut in history. I apologize to you for my behavior toward you and toward Irina." And on the other side, Anya and Irina are walking through the city and shopping, but at the same time, there is a person inside a car watching her. And the moment she stands in front of one of the stores, he quickly drives his car toward her and tries to hit her and kill her. But strangely enough, Irina manages to avoid the car and does not get hit by it. And immediately the man gets out of the car and starts running away, while Irina is sitting on the ground shocked and not understanding anything. But at the same time, Natalia appears and runs after the criminal, and manages to catch him and interrogate him. So the criminal tries to explain to her that he wants to get rid of Irina, so he can preserve the secret of the classified project. But Natalia orders her soldiers to open fire and eliminate him. And after a while, Lev goes so he can visit Anya and Irina, but he notices that Irina is upset, so when he asks her about the reason, she tells him, "I will move to another city, because I will undergo medical examinations and work there for the government." So Lev smiles at her with a sad smile, and they agree that they will go out together tomorrow, so he can say goodbye to her. And on the next day, the two of them indeed meet together. And then the two of them go to a cinema so they can watch a new movie about space that was just released, and Irina is extremely happy and excited while watching the movie, and after they finish, they go walk around the city for a while, so Irina tells him, "I made dinner especially for you." And indeed they go sit on the bench beside the lake, so the moment Lev tastes the food, he finds it very delicious, but he becomes surprised because he knows that vampires do not have a sense of taste. So she tells him, "Anya helped me prepare it." And after a while, Lev stands up and says goodbye to Irina because he is about to ride the bus and leave. And on the next day, Lev goes with the astronauts, and they head to the capital of the country so they can take some pictures, so they can make a documentary film about the astronaut who will travel to space. But despite that, the only ones who got photographed were Lev and one other friend of his, and that means the competition has now become only between the two of them. And after a while, the assistant of the president of the union goes to them and tells them, "You are way too nervous. The purpose of these photos is to show a glimpse of your daily lives. So because of that, try to smile a little. If this mission succeeds, then we will hold the celebrations here in the presence of 200,000 people. And this is the biggest celebration since our foundation." And at the same time, Anya and Irina are walking around the capital, and suddenly Irina notices Lev standing far away while getting photographed. So Irina quickly runs toward him without thinking, but suddenly a guard appears in front of her and prevents her from going, and goes to Anya and slaps her because she left Irina alone. And at night, Irina goes and undergoes the medical examination, and we find out that Irina lied to Lev, and she is not going there to work or anything, but instead she will be imprisoned, because after the human space mission, she will be eliminated. And after a while, the director of the training center stands in front of Lev and his friend, so he can announce who will become the astronaut. And the surprise is that the choice falls on Lev. So when Lev hears his name, he becomes extremely happy, because he finally got close to his dream. But suddenly his friend objects to the director, and tells him why him specifically. "I was better than him in every field." So he replies to him, "The rocket will soar through the sky carrying the dreams of our people, and the one who goes up must have enough passion to sacrifice his life for that dream. Not just someone talented, and that is all. But anyway, If anything happens to Lev during that time, you will travel instead of him. And after that, Lev goes to the rocket base, and there he meets President Slava, who welcomes him and congratulates him because he will become the first human to go into space. And at night, Irina is sitting inside her prison, singing while looking at the sky, and she imagines Lev's image among the stars, and wishes that she could be with him while he rides the rocket. And on the next day, the rocket gets prepared for launch, and at the same time, Slava stands in front of Lev and gives him the instructions that he must follow once he reaches space. And those instructions are almost exactly like Irina's mission, and the moment he gives them the signal that the launch was successful, it will be broadcast live across the entire world. And after that, they ride the vehicle and move toward the rocket. And while they are moving, Lev stops the bus and asks to go to the bathroom, and the moment he steps down, his friend goes to him and congratulates him, and tells him, "You are truly better than me and deserve to travel instead of me. Honestly, when you asked the bus to stop, I wish that you would suddenly feel sick or find a problem with your suit. Now I understand why they chose you," and extends his hand so he can shake his hand. So Lev thanks him for those words. And after that, they arrive at the rocket, and Lev stands saying goodbye to his colleagues and shaking hands with them before going up. So Slava goes to him and reminds him that the dreams of the people are now on his shoulders. So Lev promises him that he will return safely, and leans close to him and tells him please take care of Irina. She works at the space agency now. So Slava becomes surprised, and tells him, "I do not know anything about that matter." So Lev becomes shocked, and realizes that Irina lied to him, and that the Union of Zernitra already officially decided to execute her. So Slava tells him, "I will do everything I can, you must leave now." And after that, Lev goes up to the rocket and boards inside the ship. And on the other side, the workers are completely prepared, and immediately they activate the engines, and the rocket begins ascending upward. So Lev reassures them that until now he is fine and there is no problem, and the moment he officially reaches space, he gives them the signal that the launch succeeded, and now they can broadcast live. And after that, Lev looks at planet Earth, and finds it exactly like the description Irina told him about. And at the same time, it gets officially announced in all the squares of the capital about the launch of the first rocket into space carrying a human aboard it. So the people become happy and flood the streets. And during that, our Irina wakes up from sleep because of loud noises, and the moment she opens the balcony, she finds many people gathered together and chanting astronaut Lev's name. So Anya enters on her and informs her that the rocket was launched and Lev is now flying through space. So Irina becomes shocked and quickly runs toward the rooftop, and luckily no guards noticed her. But the moment she reaches the rooftop, the sunlight severely hurts her, and quickly Anya goes to her and covers her with a blanket so she can protect her from the rays. But Irina is extremely sad because she wished she could attend the launch moment with him, and be beside him just like he was beside her. And on the next day, Lev returns to Earth's surface again, and reads his name in the newspapers while being immortalized as the first human to travel into space. But that bothered Lev more than it made him happy, because now Irina's name has been completely erased. And after that, Lev appears at a celebration party, and stands with the journalists so he can hold a press conference, and then goes and talks with President Slava, who immediately notices that he is sad and depressed. So Lev tells him the newspaper did not mention Irina's name at all. So he replies to him, "You were supposed to place a distance between you and her from the start. You knew that all of this would happen, but I expect from you that you put all of this aside and become the leader of a new world. Anyway, I will try to do everything I can so I can prevent what will happen, but I cannot promise you anything." And at night, Lev sits at the desk so he can prepare a speech to say in front of the people. But every time he writes a speech, the president's assistant takes it and tears it apart, because she sees that it does not contain enough praise for the nation, and tells him, "You seem unable to think because of Irina. You knew from the beginning that this would happen. Your life has changed now, and you are supposed to bear the responsibility of being the first astronaut in history." And on the other side, one of the commanders stands in front of his soldiers, and tells them, "I received orders to eliminate Irina tomorrow at 3 p.m. during the state celebrations for Lev." But at the same time, President Slava sends the president of the Union of Zernitra a threatening message regarding Irina if he issues a decision to execute her. And during that, Anya goes to Irina while sad and crying, and tells her, "I received new orders, that starting tomorrow I will no longer be responsible for you." So Irina becomes shocked and realizes that her end is finally approaching, and gives her the necklace, and asks her to go and give it to Lev. But suddenly Anya gets angry, and tells her, "I am tired of the oppression of freedom in this country." And suddenly a dangerous idea comes into her mind, which is helping her escape from prison. And on the next day, the state celebration for the arrival of the first human to space begins, and they started gathering people in the streets. And at the same time, Lev is riding the airplane on his way to the capital. and after a short time he finally arrives, and steps out of the airplane surrounded by celebrations from the people. And he goes and stands in front of the leaders and salutes them, and tells the president of the Union of Zernitra, "I became the first astronaut in the history of the world. And all of this was for our motherland." So the president hugs him and congratulates him, and then he goes and shakes hands with the rest. And the surprise is that his father and mother are standing beside them waiting for him, so Lev goes to them and hugs them. And then he walks among the people, who are chanting his name at the top of their voices, and now the time for his speech arrives. But he is a little nervous because of the huge number of people present. And at the same time, Anya and Irina meet together, and they manage to put the guard to sleep using a sedative so he faints, and then they quickly take each other and start running before anyone catches them. But apparently Irina is showing signs of severe exhaustion and fatigue. However, she is enduring with all her strength, and after a while, they manage to escape from the building they are in, and the moment they step into the street, Irina asks Anya, "Why are you doing all of this for me?" So she tells her, "Because I want to fulfill your wish that you made at the beginning of the year." And after that they continue running again, but Irina's face turns red and her body temperature rises from the sunlight that is burning her. But she keeps pushing herself, because she wants to see Lev for the last time. And after a while they finally manage to reach the celebration, and catch Lev before he gives the speech. So Lev goes to the microphone, and greets all the people, and praises the government and his colleagues who helped him in that great achievement, and tells them we have now begun a new era, which is the era of conquering space. And soon we will send more missions, and maybe one day we will send a human to the moon. And at the same time, Irina is sad because she did not greet him, and is already preparing to return again and face her fate. But suddenly Lev speaks, and tells them I forgot something else. So Irina and all the leaders present become shocked. But the president's assistant approaches the president, and informs him that all of this was planned. And all at once Lev says in front of all the people, "I am not the first astronaut in the world. Actually it is a girl named Irina, and she is not human but rather a vampire." So everyone around the world becomes shocked, including Irina's people. And Lev continues speaking, "Irina went to space to test zero gravity and the safety of the spacecraft, and she is the main reason behind my safe return. She is a girl who is no different from my friends and family at all, and all the rumors spread about her are not true." And suddenly Irina runs through the crowd so she can go to Lev. But all at once a soldier runs after her and grabs her clothes, so they get torn off and her true appearance gets revealed to the people, and immediately she continues running and finally reaches Lev. And after that Lev takes her and presents her to the whole world, so her name can later be written in the history books. So Irina approaches the microphone and starts introducing herself, but she faces severe anger and bullying from the people. But she does not care about their words, and starts talking about her greatest dream, which is traveling to the moon one day. So the president of the Union of Zernitra takes advantage of what happened, and applauds her words, and speaks into the microphone and says, "What happened must be immortalized in history. But most importantly I want to apologize to you, because there were problems with the broadcast during Irina's mission, and because of that we could not broadcast the event across the entire world. And the goal behind sending Irina to space was living peacefully with our neighbors, not cleansing the vampire race afterward. We must live together in peace." And after that Lev and Irina go and stand in front of the president's assistant, and she tells them, "I knew that you would do this, and I wanted to take advantage of it for our personal benefit." And Irina thanks her because she officially acknowledged her, and now she can achieve her dream and travel to the moon in the future. And from that day onward, humans and vampires started dealing with each other again, and they also started traveling to space together, and in the end the Union of Zernitra managed to win the space race against the United Kingdom.